I think if we all adopt these practices together and we turn down the rhetoric, we cease with this idea that policy disputes are somehow an existential threat to democracy or the republic. We stop calling one another names.
The internet is an accelerant. It is driving extremism in our country. It's driving us apart, left and right.
Radical coming from any direction is not good, it's not healthy, and it should be called out.
A bit of a sample from the Sunday talk shows, how to lower the temperature. My next guest writes this in an op-ed. We may be on the brink of an extremely violent era in American politics. Robert Pape's a professor in the political science department, University of Chicago. And sir, thank you for your time, Professor. It's good to have you on. It's an alarming headline. Go ahead and give your point support in your argument.
Bill, we are at a watershed moment. I call this the era of violent populism in America. Violent populism is defined really by two things. First, we are seeing a rising tide of political violence on both the right and the left. Just since 2002, think about the political assassinations and assassination attempts against conservative Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, Democratic Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, missed her, almost killed her husband. 2 assassination attempts against Republican candidate for President Donald Trump. The assassination attempt against Governor Josh Shapiro. In June, the assassinations and assassination attempts against Democratic political leaders in Minnesota, and now the assassination death of Charlie Kirk.
Okay.
The second big feature of violent populism is I've been studying political violence for 30 years, I think ISIS, but in the last 5 years, American political violence, and conducting surveys of support for political violence among Americans. Our most recent survey in May found 39% of Democrats agreed that the use of force was justified to remove Donald Trump from the presidency. 39%. And also, we found 24% of Republicans agreed that the use of the U.S. military to suppress Democratic protesters was justified. These represent tens of millions of people on both sides of the aisle, and that's why you're seeing the rising tide of political violence on both sides.
Okay, let's get to some causes for that. New York Times, Aisha was talking about this earlier today about civil war. Now, this is what the New York Times found. Civil war mentions surge online after the Charlie Kirk assassination. If you pan to the right, the mentions of civil war on X are up, I guess that's 210% or 210 times. And I'm sure you have an explanation for that, but here is what Spencer Cox, the governor in Utah, explained about social media.
I believe that social media has played a direct role in every single assassination and assassination attempt that we have seen over the last 5-6 years. There is no question in my mind that cancer probably isn't a strong enough word. What we have done, especially to our kids, it took us a decade to realize how evil these algorithms are.
Sir, how does that fit into the theory?
Social media is like pouring gasoline on the fire, but it's not the fire itself. My research shows that we are being driven by a big social change that is driving support for political violence, much the way social change has driven political violence in other countries. But the details of the social change differ. We are going through a historic change for the first time in the 250-year history of our country, from a white majority democracy to a white minority democracy. In fact, the tipping point generation for this started about 10 years ago. In 1990, we were 76% non-Hispanic white. Today, 57%. Another 10 years before, 49%. Well, this helps to explain the meteoric rise of Donald Trump, why his signature issue is immigration that's gathered so much support, because there are many people that like to slow down, maybe even reverse this change. This also explains the virulent opposition to MAGA by many parts of the left, because there are many people on the left who want to continue this change. These is the reason why we can predict the rise of violent populism, and left to its own devices, this will get worse.
Well, I hope you're wrong about that last point, but it takes some deep waters that we must wade through to understand it. Robert Pape, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Chicago. Yeah.
I first met Charlie Kirk back in August 2019 in a Fox News green room and remember being struck by 3 distinctive qualities. First, Charlie was literally a towering figure. Now I'm 6 feet 1 inch and he still had a few inches on me. Secondly, Charlie really didn't have a good poker face. For anyone who spends time on TV or has gone through media training, one of the first lessons is to try and limit your facial reactions, especially in a debate. In Charlie's case, if you were saying something he disagreed with, he would shake his head or roll his eyes, or in many cases, a small smirk would come across his face and you knew that he was already formulating a strong response. Sometimes if I said something he agreed with, and there were actually more than a few times, he would nod instinctively or even smile. It was clear he didn't hold back, and every part of him was engaged in the debate. The third quality was that it was clear that Charlie really enjoyed what he was doing and relished the give and take. That last quality is really what I keep returning to in the wake of Charlie's horrific assassination on Wednesday. To see someone so young, struck down in the prime of his personal and professional life, has left me and so many people in the days since truly brokenhearted. And precisely because the manner in which he was killed, engaging in the public square, with words and dialogue, has left us all very shaken. I didn't set out to write this piece to highlight the places where Charlie and I agreed, or to make the case that there is more that unites us as Americans than divides us, even though that's what I truly believe. We had serious on-screen disagreements over COVID policies, immigration, education, and the direction of this country, especially in the lead-up to the 2020 election, with Charlie passionately pressing for President Donald Trump's re-election, and my efforts to chart a new course with the Biden administration.
We are learning chilling new details about Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin and what he allegedly did immediately following the shooting. Utah officials say the 22-year-old is under special watch and is refusing to cooperate with authorities. But people who knew him are fully cooperating. The FBI today saying it is looking into whether anyone in the crowd aided or abetted the suspect. And the FBI also revealing today that the suspect wrote a note penned before the shooting happened, saying he had the opportunity to kill Kirk and he was going to do it. The state of Utah is expected to charge him tomorrow with aggravated murder, as the Department of Justice is expected to file separate federal charges sometime today. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno here with my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany. And also joining us today, Kaylee McGee-White, Independent Women Features Editor-in-Chief and Fox News contributor, and David Webb, host of The David Webb Show on Sirius XM Patriot and Fox News contributor. Now let's go to Garrett Tenney, who is live outside of the Utah County Jail in Spanish Fork. Garrett.
Emily, a big part of this investigation now is looking into who knew what about this shooting and when did they know it. We have learned that the alleged assassin told at least 2 individuals that he was planning to kill Charlie Kirk because he hated what Charlie stood for. One of them was in a text message. The other was in a note the suspect left for his romantic partner at their home in southern Utah. Here is FBI Director Kash Patel describing that note this morning.
The suspect wrote a note saying, I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it. That note was written before the shooting. Evidence of its existence, we now have learned, existed before the shooting, was in the location in the suspect and partner's home.
That romantic partner who is cooperating with investigators is a male transitioning to a female. And you'll remember Charlie Kirk was shot right after being asked about trans mass shooters. Investigators are trying to determine if that was just a coincidence or if the person who asked that question was somehow involved. This new surveillance video obtained by TMZ also shows the 22-year-old walking to UVU's campus the morning of the shooting, about 4 hours before it happened, wearing a maroon shirt and light-colored shorts. We've also learned the FBI is investigating left-wing groups in Utah to see if they had any kind of heads up about the assassination plot or somehow helped the suspect, since his family told investigators he subscribed to left-wing ideology that had become more extreme over the past couple of years. Here's FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino.
We're looking into everything, Bill. There's not going to be a stone left unturned if there was anyone involved who aided or abetted. I can't say that in strong enough terms. Every single FBI asset on this team is being applied and used in this investigation.
The alleged assassin will appear virtually for his hearing tomorrow, and we are told we will learn a lot more about this investigation ahead of that hearing when prosecutors formally file charges against him. Emily?
Garrett, thank you. Kaylee, welcome back. What are your thoughts on this as we learn these details?
I think it's clear that two factors contributed to this suspect's potential radicalization. The first is the online community that he was involved in. This is something that unfortunately is becoming increasingly common among my generation, which is really the first generation to ever be born and raised on the internet. And young adults are increasingly finding their community online, sometimes in very dangerous spaces. And what this case reveals is that you can be raised in an entirely normal middle-class family with parents who were seemingly very involved, who loved their son, and yet still end up in the wrong corners of the internet and be inundated with radical ideology. The second element here, which will be really interesting to see as this investigation unfolds, is how much and whether at all our education system contributed to this suspect's radicalization. And based on the things that public school employees and college professors have said on the internet, my guess is that it did in part at least play a part in his radicalization. The things that these people feel comfortable saying online shows that this leftist ideology wasn't hidden inside of them. This is being exposed to our children in their classrooms. And so we need to get a grip on our education system, and we need to rail back this ideology.
Yeah, one of the headlines today read, "The Purge We Need," and it was exactly that, focusing on academia. So the article and the op-ed. David, so we expect federal charges to be filed today, and we know that the feds can file charges, so too can the state, and then they will decide. We talked about earlier about the different sovereign jurisdictions who will essentially go first and sort of take the lead. But what do you anticipate happening here?
Well, it's likely, and since Utah also has the death penalty, that they'll lead in the case. Now, the feds can run concurrently, as you know. However, given the information that Kash Patel gave in this interview this morning, it appears that there is enough available evidence, use of internet and more, that would bring the federal charges into it. That was the challenge for the federal charges. You need some form of interstate internet communication and more, therefore, the chat room. So I think that's what we can discern from this morning's interview with Kash Patel. But Utah has clear lines on this. They have the lead on this. And state charges and state prosecutors can be more effective in a death penalty case by the numbers and comparatively to the federal government. It exists in both. But right now, I think they have a strong case based on everything we know. And something we should also realize, we don't have all the facts, nor should they put them all out there. There's still an investigation underway. So they know more. We should not at this point. And that may play into the strength of the case. We'll see what happens tomorrow. They've already revealed the enhanced charges under Utah law, and they're pretty strong.
And the investigation that David mentions, Harris, so as we noted earlier, the suspect is not cooperating at all, but that person's inner circle and those he interacted with are. So what is your takeaway from that?
So I want to piggyback off of something you said, Kaylee. I think that there's always been some existence of people aren't like their parents and their family. They come out, they end up, criminals, whatever. They didn't do what they were raised to do. But you make an excellent point. Part of what's happening now is that there's an incubator for them. And that incubator is also an echo chamber. And what Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, are saying today is that they're looking at who was in the room with him on Discord, who was in the digital room with this young man, and have we lost our ability to see something, say something? Are they complicit in any kind of way? Is there a federal charge of conspiracy? All of those things coming into play, but I look at it a little bit differently from 37,000 feet. As a society, can we handle having people around a killer not say anything? Like, what kind of footprint really was there? I think it's an important part of the coverage, but it's an important part for us to know who we are and who's living among us, too. And what do we need to do with these young people? I say take every one of them and teach them to pray. I mean, you saw the tributes and the vigils over the weekend. There was so much heart healing in that. We have so much more to do with our loss of Charlie. But we have to outnumber them now to show them, and I love that because we're outnumbered, to show them that there are more of us who believe in goodness and in God.
Right. And interesting that you say that, because some also articles said, Washington bracing for the reaction. This was a couple days ago, but the reaction was prayer. The reaction was mourning, and the reaction was a peaceful, collective, gathering up. There's no rioting happening here.
Nope. You're exactly right. People are turning to prayer and to faith. And ultimately, by the way, how do you stop something like this from ever happening again? That's the answer. We have to have a spiritual revival in this country. The one Charlie Kirk called for on August 20th when he was on Fox and Friends. But the two questions I have, because that will take time to manifest in the hearts of the American people, are number one, we need to know exactly, to your point, Kayleigh, how this individual became radicalized. We must have an answer. CNN is reporting he had a 4.0 GPA. He had gotten a scholarship. He came from a close-knit family. So how does someone go from that to assassinating an individual, this suspect? Number two, as we've been discussing, Harris mentioned this too, people articulate their threats beforehand. We see this in almost any school shooting. And one came to mind also on Discord was the Georgia school shooting that happened on Labor Day. That individual had articulated a threat online. Someone reported it. The FBI came to his house, and unfortunately there was no way to detain him, and he went on to commit that shooting. Another case, just want to point this last one out. This is ABC News. Discord detected, removed, and reported a user, which led to an arrest in a potential synagogue shooting. It was a 13-year-old individual, said he was going to do something on Discord. Discord reported it. They were able to get the guy charged at the state level. And that's how you stop a school shooting from happening. Those individuals went on to live their lives because someone had the courage to report. Discord had the courage to report. We need those individuals. You could save a life.
Indeed.
One quick note to go with what Kayleigh said, if I may. Beyond that, we have to imbue a sense of responsibility in people, that if you see something bad, hear something bad.
Why did we lose that after 9/11?
We need that. And
What
that's
happened?
something that's missing in these chat rooms.
So what happened? That radicalization.
My generation doesn't remember 9/11. They've grown up in an era of peace. And to Kayleigh's first question about how this happened and how he was sucked into some of these online groups, I'll just say that, especially as a Gen Zer, with everyone's noses in their phones, it's very easy to feel invisible. And young adults are going to places that will make them feel visible. You're not always going to like the corners of the internet that make them feel that way. But I would imagine that this young man found visibility in the wrong places on the internet.
Well, just because you may not remember it doesn't mean you should repeat it. The Holocaust, so many things in history. Read up. That's what I would say to those young people.
But the fact that we could disagree passionately without the conversation turning towards violence or intimidation is a pillar of what makes America a great nation. And yet, too often we see these kinds of disagreements, amplified by social media, as zero-sum battles where the enemy must be defeated, not a fellow American to be persuaded. This current climate has bred a level of violence and vitriol that should give us all serious pause. Political violence, whether directed against conservative speakers, progressive leaders, law enforcement, or ordinary voters simply exercising their rights, strikes at the heart of democracy. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle one sits on. Violence is always wrong, and it is always destructive. Across our nation, there have been many warning signs, local school board meetings that boil over into shouting matches, members of Congress and their families facing death threats and personal attacks, simply for casting votes or advocating for policies. Activists and commentators on both the right and left are being harassed and targeted online. Taken together, these aren't isolated incidents. They are part of a broader cultural drift in which too many Americans view politics not as a debate over policy, but as a tribal battle for survival. Unfortunately, no side can claim that only the other is engaging in this type of behavior. I fear that if we allow this trend to continue, we risk normalizing violence as a form of political expression. And once that door is opened, it is very difficult to close.
Let's bring in Arizona State Senator Jake Hoffman, who was a close friend of Charlie's and organized as well as emceed the vigil held at the Kennedy Center last night. State Senator, thank you so much for being here. Tell us what it was like to be in that room.
Well, listen, it was an incredible evening. It was a God-filled evening. And I think that's the single most powerful takeaway from last night, is that every single speaker that got up talked about Charlie's love for Jesus. You know, Jesus was, Charlie had a firm commitment to the fact that if you love Jesus and if you follow Jesus, he will rescue you. And that was evidenced in the impact that we all saw. Because what we see last night and all across the country as these memorials break out organically is that his reach and impact went so much further than just college campuses. He reminded the highest echelons of American government and world leadership that faith plus courage plus truth is the only solution to saving not only America, but Western civilization. It was a beautiful night, and we were so grateful for the thousands of people that showed up to celebrate Charlie's life.
Did you sense a resoluteness in that room to carry on Charlie's mission?
I did. You know, actually, at one point during the evening, I had the opportunity to ask. I said, if you're in this room and you're under the age of 35 and Charlie impacted your life, you know, make some noise. And it was incredible. It was thunderous. They brought down the house. And it really goes to show, I mean, look, these are young people that came in. They work on Capitol Hill. They live in Virginia and Maryland. And they took the time to drive into D.C., to go to the Kennedy Center, and to say, Charlie, we hear you. We want to be the torchbearers moving forward for your vision and your dream for free and open and honest and civil debate, something that Charlie gave his life defending.
There was also something, State Senator, that happened yesterday that was very disturbing. And there was a 19-year-old in Phoenix who was wearing a shirt very similar to the one that the alleged assassin wore, which showed an American flag and an eagle on it. And he trampled a memorial outside the Turning Point USA headquarters for Charlie. And you see some people getting involved right there and stopping this person from desecrating this memorial for Charlie. He was later arrested and is being charged. But this obviously raises concerns over copycats. As a friend of Charlie's, how do you respond to this?
Well, listen, it's disgusting and it's despicable, the reaction from the left. Far too many have been celebrating this tragic demise of Charlie Kirk, this slaying of truly a civil rights icon of our time. And so I'm grateful to the patriots who stepped in and stopped that outside of the Turning Point headquarters. And look, I think what Charlie would want for all of America is tone down the rhetoric. Let's instead focus on free and honest and open debate. Let's focus on an exchange of ideas that makes us stronger, not one that divides us. And that's something that, you know, not only did Charlie push for, but obviously his relationship with Vice President J.D. Vance, President Trump, they have all been on the same page that we need solutions to America's problems. We need things that root us deeply in our founding principles and the principles that make America exceptional, not the principles of division and death and destruction like we see coming from one side of the political aisle right now.
So the question now becomes, what comes next? In the near term, President Trump will attend Charlie Kirk's funeral, but it goes well beyond that. Turning Point has just announced there have been 32,000 requests for new chapters across the country. Think of that in context. Turning Point currently has 900 official college chapters and 1,200 high school chapters, so 32,000 is a much bigger number. So I'll ask you, what is next for Charlie's vision? What comes next?
Well, you know, Erica, I think just blew the world away the other night on Jesse's show with that incredibly powerful speech. And what I can tell you is I have had the great pleasure of working closely with Turning Point for over 10 years now. And I'm inside a lot of the staff threads, and the resolve that I see from these 20-something-year-olds that they are doubling and tripling down on Charlie's mission to save Western civilization through the founding principles of this nation is so encouraging to me. And I think what you're going to see is that, you know, there's an old axiom that you slay a tyrant and his reign ends, but you slay a martyr and his reign just begins. And that is going to be Charlie's legacy. Amazingly, his impact in death will be so much greater than he could have ever dreamt when he was alive.
And Erica said during those remarks, if they thought my husband's mission was big now, you have no idea.
That's
State
right.
Senator Jake Hoffman, thank you so much for joining us. A job well done in organizing that vigil that was attended by our nation's leaders as we continue to remember the life and legacy of Charlie.
Thank you both for
joining
having me.
us. Yes.
Political leaders, especially those with large platforms and followings, bear a special responsibility to set the right tone. That means choosing words carefully, condemning violence unequivocally, and refusing to score cheap points by stoking resentment or fear. As much as I have been heartened to see the universal condemnation of Charlie's murder across the political spectrum, there have been many on the left posting videos or quotes from Charlie about his views on a whole host of issues, as if there's some kind of justification for what happened. I fundamentally disagreed with much of what Charlie advocated for politically, but that's why debate and dialogue is so important. But this isn't just about political leaders and media personalities. Every American has a role to play. We need to hold ourselves accountable for the way we talk about politics. Before sharing a meme or a comment, we should ask ourselves, does this contribute to the conversation or just add fuel to the fire?
Okay, and for more on this, we're going to bring in Kayleigh McEnany, co-host of Outnumbered, and a brand new hour on Saturdays. Congratulations to you. A really tough week for this administration. So many of these folks were deeply personal friends of Charlie Kirk. President Trump here last night on Charlie's death and how he's going to be going to Arizona. Listen here.
A sad weekend in the sense that we lost a great person. I'll be going on early Sunday morning. We're going to Arizona, taking some people with us on Air Force One. Maybe you people are going to be with us, I don't know, but we're going to be going Saturday early on Sunday morning.
Apparently, the president suggested that we should start investigating those who are celebrating Kirk's death. And there has been some back and forth about this because we're seeing just awful things, not only online, but at the memorial. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, and I would argue some of them have risen to actual direct threats. And if you have waged a credible threat, that's something that is not protected by the First Amendment. So I think, we'll see what the details are on exactly what the DOJ is looking into. But I've seen spray paint on college campuses that are calling for the death of others. And that is not protected speech. And the Supreme Court has made that clear. So I imagine they're looking at that. I imagine they're looking at any connection that this individual had with online groups. Maybe there's a conspiracy charge. Maybe there's not. But until we know that fact pattern, we won't know exactly what he meant by that statement.
You just go through social media over the weekend, you can find some things you like and find some things that turn your stomach. But it's out there. Peter Baker's writing in the New York Times, in an era of deep polarization, unity, he writes, is not Trump's mission. He was asked about that on Friday morning when he was on the couch with Fox and Friends. And he had some really pointed comments saying, the left's out, really to take you down.
Yeah, I mean,
how do you think he fits into all this national conversation for the next week and beyond?
Well, two things. President Trump is right to call out that rhetoric. He's been analogized to Hitler. If you think back to the previous administration, we were told that, there's a clear and present danger is what Republicans were. You remember that speech that Biden gave in front of the red background, a threat to the very foundation of the republic, I believe was an exact quote. That's very dangerous language. Everyone needs to tone down the political rhetoric. But Peter Baker, talking about President Trump refusing to call for unity, he pulled the same line in George Floyd, and I was press secretary at that point. He wrote a story, "In Days of Discord, a President Fans the Flames." And this was just after President Trump came out and literally said, "Healing, not hatred, justice, not chaos, are the mission at hand." So no matter what President Trump does, you're going to have the pre-baked headlines from people like Peter Baker to stir the pot a little further.
It's interesting because Charlie was actually, when he would do these debates in campuses, there's videos now where they're showing people would actually ask him about President Trump and say that he was the great divider and he's not doing enough to unify the country. And then Charlie would have this incredible answer in return and say, well, that's not true. Have you seen Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard among his administration? So he always had a quick answer to that. I want to move on to this big election that's happening here in New York City and how the governor now, Kathy Hochul, about time, right, has endorsed Zohran Mamdani. And let's put it up on the screen here. This is an op-ed from her in the New York Times. She says, why I am endorsing Zohran Mamdani. I don't know if we have more of that, but here she is with that big endorsement that everyone wondered why it hadn't come already. What are your thoughts on that?
Looking at you, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and the long list of others, I think she feels she had to. The political left is obviously very important for her in terms of her base. But when she made this endorsement, she is endorsing the future decline of New York City. When you take away the gang database, which has been attributed for decreasing crime in the city, don't take it from me, take it from the NYPD commissioner. That's what Mamdani wants. You're endorsing that. You're endorsing all kinds of rhetoric around arresting Netanyahu. You are now the face of the far left, right alongside this 33-year-old socialist. I think it's maybe she thought a good move for the moment, but it seems to me a little expedient.
So Elise Stefanik, the Republicans are going to take her on. She was talking about an hour and a half ago on our air right here. Watch here.
It was only a matter of time before she bent the knee for this raging anti-Semite communist. The reality is Kathy Hochul owns Zoran Mamdani's position to defund the police, to abolish our law enforcement, to abolish prisons, to abolish private health care insurance, to decriminalize sex workers. It is outrageous. She also owns every radical proposal, whether it's raising taxes, whether it's government-run grocery stores, and his anti-Semitism.
I kind of feel like that election, that campaign already is well underway. I wonder if this cracks the wall. You know, okay, Hakeem Jeffries has not endorsed. Chuck Schumer has not endorsed. They're both New Yorkers. Does she now give them a pass to go ahead and do it?
It could, but they may be waiting until the 11th hour. Because, look, run a counterfactual. If you have Eric Adams drop out, he says he's not going to. If Curtis Sliwa drops out, all of a sudden you're within a 10-point race with 30% of the electorate undecided. So she could end up being the one who endorsed the socialists who ends up losing to Cuomo if the cards play it out a little differently. So I would wait as long as I could. Wait till that 11th hour,
okay.
Democrats.
Little cagey, huh?
Yes.
I don't think she realizes how much they're going to butt heads. I mean, she is the governor who sent the National Guard into the subways when crime was really bad, right? Now, I don't know that he's going to like something like that happening again.
Nope. Don't embolden this guy. No gang database and an increase in crime in New York City.
We'll see you at noon, okay?
Thank you.
Kaylee, good to see you.
Thank you.
And of course, the premiere of Kaylee's new show is this Saturday morning. It's called Saturday in America, and it takes place at 10 a.m. Eastern. Be sure to catch it.
Let's go.
We should also seek out opportunities for dialogue in our own communities. I've been privileged to be a part of a program called One Small Step, powered by the team at StoryCorps. It's a national effort to bring together people with different views to record a conversation, not to debate politics, but simply to get to know each other as people. The more we remember each other's humanity, the less likely we are to fall into cycles of hate or retreat into our political tribes. History offers us cautionary tales. Nations and societies that normalize political violence do not stay true democracies for long. They slide into chaos, and America is not immune to those forces. Our collective strength lies in our ability to argue passionately, disagree humanely, and argue passionately within a framework of fundamental respect as fellow citizens. I hope we heed this call before it's too late.